Well, at this time, the legislature has come to pretty much the end of the third week of the veto session. And as we enter the Memorial Day weekend, some good news came about this week. I guess there's some bad news too, but I'll go to the good news, which of course was the fact that the House passed their version of the school finance bill. And likewise, the Senate has passed out their version as well. Probably one of the biggest differences between the two is the House has established the high watermark as far as funding, and the Senate's a little bit below that. There are some other differences, and these two bills will now come together into a conference committee whereby the negotiating teams for each chamber will try to sort out the differences and come up with a final bill for both bodies to go ahead and support and pass into law. Now, the House version is called House Bill 2410, and obviously what this does is it makes the appropriations for the Department of Education for fiscal years 2018 and 2019. Rather than go into great detail on this, I think I'll kind of wait to do that in a report later on when we see the final bill. But this did add sections concerning a report that's required by the Department of Education on or concerning school district revenues and creating the School District Extraordinary Declining Enrollment Fund. We have some districts experiencing, big declines in enrollment, so we have to address that issue as well. It's kind of one of those things where you've got a policy portion of this bill, and a lot of people supported the policy, and then you have the adequacy issue, and then of course the funding. We're trying to get everything on track so that the Supreme Court will approve of that. Now, when we get into the funding, just briefly here, the bill would appropriate a total of about $1.984 billion from the State General Fund for the state foundation aid, $480 million for supplemental general state aid. It would also have $436 million for special education state aid, and the bill would also add $800,000 for the teacher mentor program. A number of different things in the bill. It's a very complicated bill. And it did receive broad support in the House. On final action, there was 84 votes in favor of that. Those that voted in opposition to it, and there's a lot of us could have probably done that because we're wanting to make sure we do this one time and that we don't have to come back and add additional funding to meet the requirements, I guess you could say, of the Supreme Court. Nonetheless, I do believe that there's a good chance that this will satisfy the Supreme Court as far as the first year. The second year, they may ask us to go back to work and try to come up with additional funding. But for the most part, we needed to get something moving so that school districts can go ahead and move forward in creating their budgets, do their contractual obligations, and teachers need to know where they've got a job coming up in August 19th or whenever the first day of school. So as I mentioned, good news that we do have a school funding bill, and we'll see how that goes when we get back for the remainder of the session, or at least the wrap-up session. I mentioned bad news. Of course, once again, the House attempted to pass a tax bill. That would be Senate Bill 30. That came up a little bit short. Final action on that was 53 in favor, 68 opposed. I did vote in favor of that. Some of the good things of that bill, of course, it would repeal the LLC exemption. That's caused a lot of problems for the state. It removes the glide path to zero as far as income tax goes, and it would institute a third tax bracket. Now, a lot of people have a little heartburn with that. They'd like to just see two brackets. Some of the questions they had on the three bracket system was where your upper bracket started. The threshold there used to be $100,000 or more. This bill had it where it started at $60,000. So a lot of people said they could have voted either way. Obviously, 53 to 68, a lot of people switched their vote at the very end. So it was a lot closer than that. But the fact remains, I think the House has already pretty much established a position on the tax bill, and we will get something out in short order. On the other hand, the Senate's still struggling. A lot of it has to do with their insistence on a two-bracket system. Everybody, though, is on the same page as far as eliminating the LLC exemption. Now, as I mentioned, we are on a little bit of a 4-day break here before we go back, and the legislature will convene again after the Memorial Weekend. So at this time, I would wish everybody very safe and happy Memorial Day, and also commemorate those that have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country.